Trauma is a fact of life. It does not have to be a life sentence. And there are so many things that we can do in prevention and healing, and also healing in groups. I think that's another really important aspect. In trauma, one of the things we do, and somebody left this here for me, which I really appreciate because I hadn't thought to bring it, but if we think about this vast energy and how it is collapsed in the moment when trauma takes over, when we're frozen, we can't open that energy too quickly, because if we do, it's an explosion. And the nervous system, the organism is unable to integrate it. But when we're able to titrate, to just open to this energy, one small amount at a time, we're able to shift these profound energies to those of openness, of oneness, of connection, of compassion. And somebody wrote that music is what brings the world, unites the world. But I think also trauma also unites the world, because nobody gets away, in this life at least, I don't know about any of the other ones, without having encounters with threat. Sometimes they seem like they're relatively small, but they can have, as I just started to discover when I was developing the work in the 70s, they can have profound effects on our behaviors. You were talking about this really beautifully, because we see our environment through the traumatized mind. Mm-hmm. That's the filter that we have. And until we're able to open to those energies, to those experiences, and allow them to move through in the body. Also, a thing that you said a couple of times in your talk, I would just paraphrase it a little bit differently and say that ultimately trauma is a disorder of not being able to be in the here and now. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, are there any mountains without valleys? So when people experience these states, it's as though we have an opportunity to become aware of them, because otherwise we don't know that they're there. But it's in that contrast that allows us to say, oh, something is different here. Something has a different meaning now.
You said something very lovely. You said, trauma is a way where we cannot be in the here and now, because there's frozen past part of my here and now. And I don't know about you, but I meet many people that ask, okay, how long do I still need to do shadow or trauma work? How long will it take to wake up? And it's very interesting, because that question has nothing to do with time. That question only indicates that I don't want to be here. Did you ever notice that whenever you're really present, you don't ask how long it's going to take? No, really. When you're really aligned with something, we don't ask about time. Why? Because we are fully here.
To find out some of those places where the energy's stuck. And it doesn't matter if you think of it coming from this life or other lifetimes or whatever, the wave pattern is there. And when you're able to get there and unhook this, he called them ego points. I call them fixation or trauma points. When you're able to open enough of those, then the forward movement of the wave reconstitutes itself and moves on.
as I said before, that we did a lot of work in Germany, also Germany, Israel, and one thing strikes me, that unconscious trauma energy is destiny. Destiny is unconscious energy has no choice. Putting people into concentration camps and killing them, that choice has been made already, but it's not finished. So unconscious energy is destiny, like an unconscious energy runs me because I'm not aware of it. So I will take decisions or do things that are, or be addicted to something that is not in my control. So we say in the mystical understanding, unconscious energy is destiny. There is no free choice. Free choice comes through consciousness. Consciousness allows new possibilities to come in. So in our understanding, the past is not what happened yesterday. The past is what stayed of what happened yesterday. When people go to exams at the university, or they need to take a serious business decision, and they say they are afraid, we culturally agree that people are afraid when they take exams, where in fact the fear has nothing to do with the exam. The fear has something to do with the person's past. And the fear might reduce my capacity to take decisions or act freely in this moment. But my past overshadows my moment. And that means that the past is only what is left and affects my moment through body sensations, emotions, and thoughts that have nothing to do with this moment. And the future is not what happens tomorrow. The future is the download of higher consciousness that changes my today. In other words, the update of myself today. So that's, and I like that the update is blocked. Our innovation capacity is reduced, the more energy is held in these fixations of the past. Maybe many intimate relationship arguments that you had 1 year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and you have it still. That's not the future. That's the repetition of the past. So past has a cycle to repeat itself until it's conscious. And so when we take this seriously and transfer it now to a collective dimension, it means all the energy that is still frozen in our collective unconscious, being it because of slavery and atrocities and racism, being it because of the Holocaust and other dictatorships and wars, that seriously affects our choices. Because that's destiny. That's the destiny of humanity, not the free choice. Yeah. And we think we have so much free choice. I mean, first of all, it's good to ask what it's free of. And secondly, it's kind of, that's not true. Many people that suffer from addictions show that you don't have a free choice to take the next cigarette or not, often. And so I believe that that's an important understanding, so that there is something in our culture that lives between us, that is in here, these fixations and these ripples, they are here in the room, sitting here without us noticing it. So the air in between us is not only air, but it's a lot of information that doesn't arise in my awareness. And I think one thing, because you ask what we can do, is we can create this kind of environments where through deep relation and meaningful attention and presence, we create a very present field that allows us to work on this. Whenever we ran a lot of collective trauma processes, and one thing that is always the same is there's a moment when there is a wave of energy coming into the room that is not part of our personal experience, but everybody in the room knows now something has happened. It's so strongly to feel that, because in collectively traumatized cultures, it's mostly that not I'm traumatized and you are all stable, I'm traumatized and you are also unstable. A major resource is not in the room. So, and that's, I believe, leads to not only an individual trauma regulation, but to a social trauma regulation. If now that social trauma regulation would stop, many people in Germany would be psychotic. Or many people here in this room. But there's so much energy that is held down because it's better for life to do it that way than in another way. So trauma actually is a very intelligent function. And I think we are here to develop, especially people that have already a lot of personal development, to develop new tools to deal with the collective chunk of our past. Because a lot of it, we did to ourselves as humanity.
Trauma is about broken connection.
That's right.
Broken connection to self, broken connection to other, broken connection to spirit.
Right.
So at any of those levels, we're able to move more out of the fixity into the flow, into the reconnection, into the new connections. Again, then we're just opening up one more area of the fixation and allowing the energy to come flowing.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And it's, you say it exactly as true. When you're in this in a room and something shifts, because I started working in Germany around in 1981, and nobody would go anywhere near, anything having to do with the Holocaust.
That's right.
But then when people started to heal, I remember one person whose father was in the SS, worked to heal. And then that immediately brought up one person whose parents were in the resistance. But then they shared, it's the same trauma. And then that was when the wave went through the room.
That's so beautiful. And you said something very beautiful before that I want to highlight. You said trauma connects us. And it's like paradox. I also, because I live at the moment in the Middle East, there's so much collective trauma, and it's what divides us the most, and it's what connects us the most. That's very important. Trauma connects us because trauma is painful all over the world, and the same response is painful all over the world. The same trauma response is happening all over the world, and I think that's an important thing. We are connected through the traumatization of the world. That's an interesting thing to think about. And also what we said before, that what you said before, that we want to be alive, we want to be participating in life's process, and that flow experience comes with the release of energy. And so if we want to live up to our potential, so then trauma work is crucial. Because it's a data flow through us, and there's a transgenerational data flow through us.
Okay. When we use the word memory, most of us use it in a very narrow way, and psychologists who are in an academic profession learn about memory as being conscious, as being something you can recall deliberately. But the types of memory that are involved in trauma have nothing to do with that. They cannot be remembered in any sense the way a declarative memory is remembered. They're remembered in the body. These are so-called procedural memories. This was the reason I wrote the book Trauma and Memory, because there's so much confusion and so much misunderstanding of what it means to have a memory. We all are remembering everything that's ever happened to us, and probably everything that's ever happened to us for generations. But we remember it not as memories as we normally think of it, but of reaction patterns in our body and emotions that just erupt seemingly out of nowhere. And it's important in working with trauma is to know how to meet and bring those types of unconscious memories into greater and greater consciousness. And then they can begin to be formed into a narrative, which is also important in healing. Narrative is similar to ritual, I think, in many ways. We're able to make sense because we are meaning creatures, we're meaning animals, so we do need that. But that can only occur after we've been able to access these procedural and emotional memories and begin to put them in the past where they belong. Do I have to have a memory? Again, similar to work on it. I said, no, you have to have some kind of a symptom. Everybody has a symptom. Everybody has a behavior. Everybody has a haunting. That's all you need.
Yeah, I agree with this. And also, like in the, let's say, in my understanding of healing, I'd always start with the most close to you. So even if there is an entanglement with a collective issue, I would start first, as Peter said, with your symptoms. Because the symptoms guide us. Like the skill, the art of healing is that we are not blinded by the symptoms, and we are pretty fast in tracking where they come from. So if that's the case, healing, like as when you grow, yeah, your innermost intimacy is your central nervous system, like your self-contact. So when you're in connection with yourself, then from there you grow and create bigger and bigger circles of radius of relation. And the healing is when somebody starts to say, do I feel my pain or the pain of the world or the pain of all the women or the pain of... First, let's start with your pain, and when we are there, let's go to a bigger cycle, but not the other way around. Because usually this creates a lot of confusion, and then people bypass their own difficulties through dealing with the collective. That's not the collective work that we want to do. We want to first start here, and then when this is more stable, then to reach out and become aware of a bigger radius of, we call this radiuses of intimacy. Then I can really consciously experience more of the world in me. But there's a lot of confusion sometimes. People go too fast to collective issues, and then they're completely confused because we lose track of the energy. And I agree with what Peter said. When you're like, being on track with a client is that you're surfing on the energy of the moment, and the energy always tells you the truth. Energy never lies, because we are not caught up in interpreting the energy, we are looking how it flows. And that's why that's the best tracker to unravel the question between individual and collective issues.
There's a lot of emphasis on working directly with this, all of this generational, without having the foundation of working with one's own issues, because they're more tangible, they're more accessible. But then they give you tools to work with other types of generational.
Right. So here's my take on it. I think ritual is an amazing way to create group coherence through music, through all kinds of... So we create coherence, which means like our nervous systems and our bodies and our whatever, all our minds start to get into a kind of a mutual field vibration. And I think that's very helpful. The other thing is, my understanding so far of healing is that healing needs precision. And some rituals can be create very lovely spaces where people feel good, but without the right precision, it's not going to have a sustainable change effect. So I would say a ritual with precision is an amazing thing to do. And I think also when we come together here, and like now, there's a lot of group presence here in the room. And I think if we learn how to use this more and more as a resource, and we are precise with what we address with it in life, it's like a music instrument. It's like when you come and you play in an orchestra, if you don't tune your instrument, it's going to sound a bit weird. But if everybody has a tuned instrument, it's going to sound great. And I think our job is to see if we do larger rituals to also attune them precisely and see what we can do with it and maybe what not. So that's how I would look at it.
Every time anyone makes this shift affects everyone else.
It's beautiful.
And it's a matter of exponential growth. You know, you do one here and another here and another here, and then the wave moves out, the wave moves out.
Beautiful, yeah, very beautiful. Our trauma is just a kind of a reverberation of so many other trauma layers that are already in society, which means that we are dealing actually with the way, our ethical way of living. So the trauma healing is a coming back to a way of living where we really can create societies with less violence, with less wars, with many things that are less. And so the ethical part of our spiritual practice is as important as the state practice. And I think, so when we are in our groups, we see that the more we create coherent fields that are appropriately related, the fractures in the field become more obvious. So the trauma becomes more obvious through a deeper relational field and a deeper group presence. And so what we induce is a lot of group presence, that when one person speaks, many other people have the presence and the energy to really be there for that person. And that then all of us together are an amazing resource for healing.
Yeah.
And I think, as also what you say, Peter, that it needs a step-by-step process. So we need to know how to walk in the right dose, and I think that's an art.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really an artistic process that needs a lot of skill, and it needs a lot of attunement. So we learn how to use our nervous system in a very precise way to track trauma fields in other people, especially the people that are professionals, and how we relate to trauma layers on the layer of time-space where they happened.
Working with trauma is not something you learn in a weekend. If somebody says, I'm going to teach you how to work with a trauma in a weekend, be smart, go the other direction. You know, and the one other thing I think that in working this way, really working at the core of trauma, the essence of trauma, is that the person then is able to say, I'm alive. I'm alive and I'm real. I'm alive and I'm here. And that's it.
A philosophical discussion with a dissociated or disembodied person about reality is dangerous. We not talk in a disembodied, dissociated situation. We don't argue if reality is this or that or real or not. We can talk about the fundamental building blocks of reality, but not in a dissociated state. Because then, exactly what you said, then I don't have an experience of me being real in life, and my escape is asking questions about the nature of reality. Like this, I'm already part of your shadow. And I think we, in the spiritual practice, we need to be very aware what I invest my chi in. If I invest my life energy into your shadow, we are co-funding a shadow company. Like, that's a startup. And everything that we fund grows. So a spiritual practice like conscious awareness is not about myself, it's also what do I support in culture, and I can support your unconscious only when I am unconscious. So conscious awareness and integration also means that I start to support health and not shadow. Because shadow, in my understanding, is not a personal thing. Shadow is a co-investment. Like, my unconscious cannot keep on living when you don't support it, and vice versa. So conscious communities are actually invitations to grow. And I think the trauma work is a very important aspect of that growth. So, yeah.